Welcome back, folks. It's time for another Sty story. Okay, let's get right at it. This one is goes back about, I would say 32 years or more. um, this story is titled Ruthie's Hard Hat Cafe. Now, it doesn't exist anymore, so don't waste your time trying to find it. It's just not there anymore. In fact, the last time I had been there, it was probably on its last year of operation. If it went a couple years beyond that, I'd be amazed. Because the old gal, Ruthie, she was in her late 70s at that time when I was last there. Well, Ruthie's Hard Hat Cafe was in a somewhat remote area in northwestern Montana. When I moved out there with my family, our intentions were, with several other individuals, that we were going to develop an 80-acre parcel, and all of us were going to be establishing homes on this 80 acres. Well, we decided to opt out. Excuse me. Oh gosh, should have had 2 sips of coffee. So when we decided to opt out, we decided, well, we need to find a place to rent. Well, my ex-wife, she worked out a deal and found a place for us to rent. Awesome. Neat little place. And someday I'll do a Sty story around that house we moved to, because it was really a neat house. And we had some great experiences in that house. The old gal that owned the house also owned a little cafe out on the highway. Sat there all by itself, this little cafe out, it stood out from the middle of nowhere. And so, of course, being she was our landlady, we decided, well, we should patronize her cafe. So we went and we checked out the cafe. Well, her little cafe didn't have any tables. It didn't have any regular chairs. What it had was this huge horseshoe-shaped counter. Now, when I say counter, it was at least bar height. Sat really tall. And all the way around it were high back bar stools all the way around it. So old Ruthie could go down the center of this horseshoe-shaped counter and wait on her customers. At the other end was the open-air kitchen. You could see everything she was preparing right there at the end of that counter, and she'd bring it out to you right there. I mean, the counter was about 24 feet long. So you had, with the end of the counter and the 2 sides, at least 50 feet of seating around that counter. You'd never think you could squeeze that into a small building like that, but boy, it worked. It worked really well. Now, one thing, old Ruthie, when we got to the cafe, we sat at the counter. We asked old Ruthie for a menu, and she said, "Menu's on the wall." Well, we look up on the wall, and there's a board up there, and it's only got half a dozen things on it. And she says, "Just so you're aware, all I serve is breakfast." And I said, "Really? Just breakfast?" And she goes, "Just breakfast." She said, I'm open from 4 a.m. every morning, 7 days a week, and I close at 11 o'clock in the morning. No, we got in there at about 10. And she said, I close at 11 unless I have customers. And then I'll stay open as long as I have a customer. And we thought, boy, this is really unique. And I'm looking at the walls, and I see hard hats hanging on the walls. And I told the ex-wife, I said, well, now I know why they call it the Hard Hat Cafe. And old Ruthie overheard me. And she comes over and she says, well, I'll tell you what, young man. At that time, I was less than half of Ruthie's age. And she was, I believe, 74 at that time. And old Ruthie said, the reason it's called the Hard Hat Cafe is, she says, I'll turn the clock back a little bit. She said, when I first opened it, I just called it Ruthie's. And she says, then I changed the name to Ruthie's Hard Hat Cafe because when she first started her cafe, times were really tough in that neck of the woods. And really, unless you owned a business, there was only 2 lines of work you were in. You were either in logging or you were in mining. You were either a logger or a miner. Well, even when I was there, I worked on a couple of logging crews, short jobs. They had the same rule. And then I found out that the local mine had the same rule. If you show up without a hard hat, they would give you a loaner, but they'd take $2.50 off of your paycheck because you rented that hard hat for your shift. So every day you showed up without a hard hat, it cost you $2.50. Old Ruthie, and here's the key, the mine did the same thing. The mine only paid every 2 weeks. Loggers, on the other hand, always got paid at the end of the job. Sometimes your job, you'd be on a logging contract that would last a month. So you'd go without pay for a month. So you got to live on what you've got until you got paid at the end of that month. You got a big fat check, but you didn't get any money while you're earning it. So what old Ruthie did was she found out that guys were coming in and coffee, endless coffee, was 50 cents at Ruthie's Cafe, at her Hard Hat Cafe. She gave you these big, huge ceramic mugs. And in the corner, she had 2 big 50-cup coffee makers. She didn't serve coffee. She served you the cup. She'd set the cup in front of you. You had to go get your coffee from the corner. But you could drink all you wanted for 50 cents. Now, she started realizing that these guys would come in. She'd get 5, 6 loggers would come in there, and 2 or 3 of them would order something for breakfast. The others would just sit there and drink coffee. And one day she asked them, well, aren't you hungry? For crying out loud, you've got to go out and you're going to be working in the woods for 12 hours today. You shouldn't be heading out there without a full stomach. A nice hearty breakfast is what's going to get you through the day. Well, they explained to her, we don't get paid till the end of the month, so we can't afford to have breakfast, but we can swing a cup of coffee, but we can't afford breakfast. Now, she knew that they get penalized anywhere from $2 to $3 a day for not having their hard hat. their issued hard hat, they'd have to rent one for the shift. So she told him, you give me your hard hat and I'll hang it on my wall. I will charge you $2.50 for a breakfast, and I'll keep a tab until you get paid. And then you come in and you pay me my $2.50 for each breakfast you have here to buy your hard hat back. And they thought about that, and they thought, well, for $5 a day, I get Ruthie's big breakfast. Well, her logger's breakfast, she called it. Excuse me, the logger was different. It was the hard hat breakfast. Her hard hat breakfast was only for those guys that had a hard hat on the wall. And that hard hat breakfast was insane. You got a big oval platter. I mean, it was huge. It was bigger than any I've ever seen in a restaurant before. But you got that big oval platter. It had 4 eggs on it. It had a huge pile of hash browns. You could have sausage, bacon, or ham. If you asked for ham, it was a big chunk of ham steak that weighed at least a half a pound. Same with the sausage. If you ordered sausage, it was a sausage patty that you would not believe. It was close to an inch thick, and it was, oh gosh, it covered about a third of that plate. It was huge. At least a half a pound of sausage. If you ordered bacon, you got about 12 slices of thick sliced smoked bacon. All the toast you could eat, and endless sourdough pancakes. Now I'm going to do a video about her sourdough pancakes, but we're not going to talk about them now. But you had endless sourdough pancakes, all you wanted. And it was only going to cost them $2.50. But they got to thinking, well, yeah, I got to pay the $2.50 fine for not having my hard hat at work. So it's a $5 breakfast. Where can you get a breakfast that big for $5? Even back then, 30 plus years ago, you couldn't find a breakfast like that for $5. It was not going to happen. So hence the Ruthie's Hard Hat Cafe. Now, I asked so many times for Ruthie to let me order the hard hat, and she said, no, you can't. Not unless you have a hard hat to put on that wall. And she says, and the only way to get that hard hat on the wall is for you to be broke and run a tab with me. And then when you pay the tab off, you get your hard hat back. So when I was drilling, when I got done drilling, actually, when I left that line of work, I told her, I said, I got my hard hat here, Ruthie, I want a hard hat breakfast. And she said, give me the hard hat. She put it on the wall. And she served me a hard hat breakfast. And I think I had 3 or 4 hard hat breakfasts. And then I came in one day and paid them off. And she said, don't forget your hard hat. And I said, you keep it, Ruthie. I'm not going to need it again. I'm not going to do that work anymore. And left my hard hat behind with her. Now, I don't know what ever happened, because she had about 6 or 8 hard hats that were considered abandoned. I don't know whatever happened to them. But there were times you knew the progress of a logging contract. See, now the miners were allowed to do it also because they got paid every 2 weeks. By the end of the first week, they really couldn't swing their $2.50 a day to have breakfast before they headed to shift. So they would ask her, can I get a hard hat? And she'd make them put their hard hat on the wall, because they got fined also for not having their hard hat with at work. So anyway, You could tell the status of a logging contract by the number of hard hats on that wall. When you're getting way out towards the end of a local logging contract, there'd be 20, 25 hard hats hanging on that wall, and the place would be full. All these loggers would be packed in there having their hard hat cafe breakfast, their hard hat breakfast. And old 74-year-old Ruthie ran that restaurant all by herself. She didn't have a waitress. She didn't have a cook. She was the cook, the waitress, the proprietor, all in one. Tough old gal. I got some stories about her I'm going to do. I just adored her. She was a tough one. Wow, she was a tough old gal. Ruthie's been long passed away, and God bless her. People like that you just don't find every day. But that's it. That's Ruthie's Cafe, and Sty wants to thank you all for coming along for this Sty story. Hope you enjoyed it. As always, if you're not subscribed, please subscribe. Hit that like button. Boy, it really helps. It really helps on the algorithms for YouTube. The more likes you have, and ring the bell. You ring that bell and you'll be notified every time something goes up on my channel. But until the next time, and don't forget, Sty does go live at the Sty Shack. Watch for him. Until then, all of you have a very, very nice day. Bye-bye.